big money. Paramount CEO wants to buy Warner Brothers to change CNN for favoring Donald Trump in the upcoming election. There's an issue. So, put it up full mass. This is a hell of a story. After Warner Brothers accepted an offer to purchase it from Netflix, Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison announced that Paramount would attempt to pull off a hostile takeover by presenting shareholders with his own bid. Ellison has reportedly told Trump administration officials that he would implement, quote, sweeping changes at CNN should he succeed in acquiring Warner Brothers. Discovery, the cable news network's parent company. The Wall Street Journal reported that, quote, during a visit to Washington in recent days, David Ellison offered assurances to Trump administration officials that if he bought Warner, he would make sweeping changes to CNN, a common target of President Donald Trump's irony. People familiar with the matter said, quote, Trump has told people close to him that he wants new ownership of CNN, as well as changes to CNN programming, end quote. Adding the Journal story, Trump has long considered CNN enemy territory. In a rant on the White House lawn earlier this year, he derided the networks as, quote, scum. If this story is true, which obviously it is, that would mean the deal should not be sanctioned judicially due to the fact that the government is involved in silencing freedom of speech and freedom of press. That is a constitutional no-no. It is in the Constitution that the government shall not impede on this sacred freedom. But the government is getting involved. That alone should disqualify any type of deal being approved by any court, period, if it comes to that. So Paramount Skydance, $108 billion hostile takeover bid for Warner Brothers Discovery includes billions of dollars in funding from who? Middle East investors. And Jared Kushner, private equity firm. We wondered what he was going to do with all of that loan money. There's more. According to reports on Monday, quote, a filing confirms that Paramount's tender offer is also supported by a $24 billion in debt financing from sovereign wealth funds from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Abu Dhabi, as well as from Jared Kushner, Affinity Partners, the Hollywood Reporter reported. It's not finding what's illegal about this deal. It's the actual issue is finding what's legal about the deal. This is raising alarms, obviously, the analysts. Here it is.
In the United States, we have this thing called the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. It's made up mostly of Trump cabinet members, and they review deals to see if there are national security concerns. Ultimately, the president gets the final say on whether or not deals go through or not. With this Paramount bid, they've accepted $24 billion from sovereign wealth funds and additional funds from Jared Kushner's firm. Typically, CFIUS would be reviewing that very closely. But what they've done in this situation is they said that these sovereign wealth funds have decided to forego governance rights board seats. Artie, it's very unusual. Why would you put $24 billion into a bid and forgo any control? The obvious answer is soft power.
In the last year, Paramount merged with Skydance, giving the Ellison family control over CBS News. Kushner, with the help from Saudi Arabia, took video game giant Electronic Arts private in the largest leveraged buyout ever. And to top it all off, the Ellisons, who are major Trump supporters, agreed to play a key role in TikTok's US operations. That is an enormous amount of influence over media. And if their bid with Warner Brothers Discovery is successful, it is only going to get much, much bigger.
What is this fundamentally about? The manipulation of you, the controlling of the narrative, the deception to the masses, propaganda, marketing, binary market, framing the debate. It goes on and on. That is what it's about. Now, naturally, utilizing the White House in such a public way to steer the deal in their favor is, well, not common and definitely, based on the Constitution and law, not legal. So investigative journalists, we're going to get to that in a minute, is an interesting interplay. Kushner's inclusion in this, Paramount, Skydance offer, comes after Netflix boss, Ted Sarandos, recently met with his father-in-law, Donald Trump. That's according to the New York Post and according to Bloomberg. The Netflix boss was making his case for why Netflix acquiring WBD would not be an antitrust violation. Trump on Sunday praised the Netflix executive as a shrewd businessman, but also said that Netflix bid for WBD could be a problem. David Ellison's father, Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison, is also a big supporter of Donald Trump. So there's an investigative journalist, Dre Dossier, looked through the Ellison's corporate filings and concluded that CNN was always the real target in the hostile takeover anyway. Here's what she reported, quote, "But here's what I can't stop thinking about. While everyone's focused on what Netflix is buying, nobody's paying attention to what they're not buying and who's positioned to pick up those pieces. Because on December 4th, the day before Netflix big win got announced, one of my Google alerts went off. Larry Ellison's net worth had just surged $5.2 billion in a single day, jumping him from third richest person in the world to second. Quote, the Oracle rally traced back to December 1st. That's when a Dutch bank reiterated its buy rating on the stock, calling it, quote, an attractive entry point given recent weakness, end quote. Except Oracle had been sluggish for months. No earnings surprised that week. No major contracts. Nothing that will make a bank suddenly remind everyone Oracle's a buy. And yet, the bank picked December 1st, the exact day final bids were due in the Warner Brothers Discovery auction. Analyst upgrades typically takes 3 to 4 trading days to translate into wealth gains for major shareholders, which means a December 1st call would predictably land on Ellison's net worth by December 4th. There's more. Quote, one day before he was announced as the loser. That timing feels coordinated. It doesn't help the bid they've already submitted, sure, but it's really helpful if you're about to publicly lose and need to look like you're winning at something else. Even more helpful if you need that kind of financial backing for a purchase you actually want to make. Let's put up the pinnacle pattern. Quote is, I've watched the Paramount Skydance merger closely in 2024. tracked every SPV they use because if you want to understand how billionaires move, you don't watch what they say. You watch what they find. 3 entities stood out. Pinnacle Media Ventures 1, 2, and 3. All filed the same day, June 28th, 2024. 9 days later, the Paramount Skydance deal was announced. Pinnacle Media Ventures is the umbrella structure Larry Ellison creates with LLCs beneath them for David's direct investments, end quote. There's more. Quote, if the Ellisons were planning to acquire Warner Brothers, they'd probably use the same structure. And what do you know? There seems to have been a Pinnacle Media Ventures 4 filed December 1st, 2025. Same day final bids were due. Same day that same bank upgraded Oracle. Now that's interesting because those two things suggest opposite conclusions. Filing a new acquisition entity suggests confidence. You don't create that infrastructure unless you're expecting to use it. But if they already knew they were losing Warner Brothers, why file it at all? Unless Pinnacle Media Ventures 4 isn't for Warner Brothers, unless it's for something else. And here's what made me pause. There's only one of them. For Paramount, they needed 3. If they were buying all of Warner Brothers Discovery, wouldn't they need a similar structure? But if they were only planning to buy one piece, maybe one holding company is all you need. Here's her conclusion.
Maybe your plan is to only buy one piece of Warner Brothers Discovery. Which brings me to what Netflix is not buying. Netflix is not buying the cable networks. The deal requires Warner Brothers Discovery to spin off CNN, TNT, TBS, and all of the Discovery networks into a separate company called Discovery Global. And it will become its own publicly traded company available for someone else to buy. Which, to be fair, that was always kind of the plan. So why not wait for that to happen in April of 2026 like it was supposed to? Why would the Ellisons want to force Warner Brothers Discovery into an early sale? Because remember, they were giving all of these unsolicited bids for the whole company starting back in September, only to be turned down again and again and again, and then to lose again finally in December. I think losing was the point. What if their only goal was to force this spinoff to happen before April of 2026 so that they could buy the one piece that they wanted, CNN, before the primaries?
Fascinating and brilliant journalism. Diabolical planning by these individuals is being alleged. Significant maneuvering in financial markets in order to make the main thing not the main thing. For one purpose, you. That alone should tell you that you are empowered. That alone should remind you who's really in control. You. Because if you weren't the factor, they would never go through all of this trouble in order to manipulate you. All right, dear brother, thoughts here.
I appreciate you spinning that way because that makes me feel a lot better. Because as I watch this all unfold, the only feeling I get is, man, there's a sense of powerlessness going on, especially as more and more power, more and more of our culture goes just funneling straight to the top with these billionaires. I think that no matter how you slice this story, it's like every individual slice reveals a new shade of corruption that's going on. And it's kind of comical. It reminds me of a lot of my family members who, when they talk about the Trump administration, they'll say, well, at least he's not in it for the money. And then these deals like this happen, or Jared Kushner gets a deal with Saudi Arabia, or all of a sudden he's meddling in these kinds of affairs so they can actually control the media and manipulate the population. It's so obvious what's going on. I think what kind of drives me a little crazy is just seeing how few people seem to care about what's going on. Like, it's right in front of us. And it should be sounding every alarm in our minds. And yet, I mean, hopefully people catch wind of this and recognize how big it is and how corrupt it is and diabolical, as you said.
That's right. And this is why they did not want you to be woke, because they wanted you to remain asleep when they did things like this to you. But I believe that people are being shaken out of their slumber. And that is the power
Amen.
of awareness.